Good morning, maybe, depending where you're watching this, or if you're watching this after the stream is over. This is a one of my random late night live streams. I do these in the middle of the night because I live in a part of the country where internet isn't exactly great. The service during the day tends to get bogged down by my neighbors who don't live with me, but for some reason are all wired using the same internet. When they start doing things like watching YouTube or streaming video games or whatever, it slows the traffic down. I've seen the internet service provider company here in my town wiring for fiber optic cable, but as is predictable, it's not available in my neighborhood yet. So the if you've ever seen my attempts a few years ago of trying to live stream during the day, you've seen how that did not exactly work. the Things would lag out. But that's not a problem here at 2:20 in the morning Central Standard Time where I'm at. Once that gets fixed, maybe we'll try some live streams during the day. But for now, we are streaming here at 2 in the morning and be a slightly casual live stream, a couple random topics. Um, First one I want to talk about is there's a story floating around. I've seen screenshots floating around of this story on social media and people blindly sharing it. I don't know why people are doing that, but it came from The Guardian, and you've probably seen it. I don't have the ability right now to put things on the screen because this is a live stream. I haven't figured out that function yet. But the headline from the Guardian is Vatican offers time off purgatory to followers of Pope Francis tweets. Papal court handling pardons for sins says contrite Catholics may win indulgences by following World Youth Day on Twitter. Yeah, and that sounds pretty outrageous, doesn't it? And the Guardian is pretty mainstream. They've got a definite slant in their political bias, but that seems like pretty outrageous. But then if you go down a little bit, you see that it was posted on Tuesday, July 16th, 2013. So 10 years later, for some reason, people are sharing this story on social media. Now, to my knowledge, Francis has never lifted that gift of indulgences for following World Youth Day on Twitter. And so if you believe him to be the pontiff, then you would probably be able to embrace those indulgences, in theory anyway, by keeping to the standard rules for an indulgence, being, in a state of grace, you're going to confession with a certain amount of time, receiving the Eucharist, and doing whatever else is required. But this is one of those stories that people share the cropped headline from, just like a screenshot, basically as a meme on social media. And, 10-second search on Google finds that the article is 10 years old. Now, that having been said, that doesn't really mean that this isn't not an absurd story. It just means it's not relevant anymore. A lot of people have shared that one. You see other stories like it. It's just, I don't know. I wanted to clear the air on that one for people who might think that Francis is giving indulgences now for World Youth Day. I would expect there are other indulgences for World Youth Day for the participants if you are so inclined to go, although I don't know why anybody would want to go to World Youth Day, but that's just me. But the story that I put in my title of the video is absurd. It's turned out that whistleblowers over at Fox News just revealed that Fox News is matching employee donations to the Temple of Satan. Yeah, because that's actually a 501c3 organization in the United States. That is a nonprofit organization. It's treated in basically the same way as any sort of secular activist one is. They very carefully, to my knowledge, don't consider themselves a religion. They argue that they're not a religion, which is why Fox News Corporation will happily do matching gifts for that. For instance, if you tried as a Catholic to give money from your employer, through your employer to, say, your parish or the diocese you live in, I very seriously doubt that Fox or any other employer would match that donation. But they have no problem doing it for the Temple of Satan. The Temple of Satan, by the way, this is what they say their mission is. The mission of the temple is to encourage benevolence and empathy among all people, reject tyrannical authority, advocate practical common sense, oppose injustice, and undertake noble pursuits. The temple has publicly confronted mean groups, fought for the abolition of physical punishment in public schools, applied for equal representation when religious installations are placed on public property. That is not actually what they stand for. The equal representation for what? Because it's usually, some Christian school district somewhere puts up the Ten Commandments or something, and then they agitate to get some statue of I don't know, Baphomet or something placed there instead or next to it. That's not exactly equal representation. Not that I would be for if they were trying to put a statue of the fat guy you see with a loincloth on that you see statues of in, say, Chinese restaurants. I wouldn't be up for that either, but that would be more what equal representation would be. But instead, they just put something that's meant to offend the sensibilities of people who go to or who hold to beliefs akin that are in line with the Ten Commandments. But yeah, that's Fox News. But are you surprised? Given, how they got rid of like the one decent person there recently and how they've essentially tried to silence that person who has gone on to Twitter to do their show later. Are you really that surprised that, their big name personalities have come out desperately trying to reassert, that mainstream conservative brand from like 20 years ago, the one that basically destroyed what last vestiges there were of sensibility in this country and opened the door for all the weird stuff going in the culture. They're the ones who opened the door for that. That's just the fact. They're responsible for that. So yeah, they're all responsible for all news outlets. Yeah, they're all. I mean, the difference at this point between CNN, MSNBC, Fox News it's minuscule. And of the three, I actually respect MSNBC the most, not because I agree with them, because I don't, but because they don't hide their bias. Their bias is so brazenly upfront. They fully admit their bias, and there is something to be respected for their honesty. At least they are honest with everybody with what it is they believe and what their bias is. CNN tries to act as if they're, the sensible, mainstream, unbiased thing while having the same bias as MSNBC, so it makes them dishonest. And Fox News is basically the same kind of thing as MSNBC, except not near it's, but it's all like establishment, so hard line establishment friendly. It's ridiculous. Newsmax regurgitates Associated Press stories on their website. Wow. I mean, there's one thing to use the AP and others as sources, but you should, add some commentary to it or something when you're supposed to be in a news organization that openly has a political bias. Like I read AP stories, but I quote them and then I, try to insert some, sanity into them. That's how I do things anyway. Good morning, Miriam. I'm hoping everyone who is tuned in is doing well. I was going to, show some mail that I got just because, very informal live stream, not the most planned thing. Some of you might be interested to know Bernard Jansen over, who I quoted in my Malachi Martin videos. I highly recommend you read or watch on YouTube, or preferably go to his website and buy the CD set if you can. His set of interviews with Malachi Martin from the 1990s, instead of the Art Bell ones. The Art Bell ones are okay, but the Bernard Jansen ones are far superior. He sent me a book set called The Wisdom of the Ages, Malachi Martin, something most of you I'd never heard of. And what these are the print versions of those interviews. So there's the Catholicism Overturned one, the Eternal War, all of them. They're all in print, so they can be read. He sent that to me, and I am very thankful for it, and they will be very, very useful in future projects. I would also, if you want, you can go to his website is Triumph Communications, and you can go there. You can buy them there directly. You might be able to find these also on Amazon or something if you prefer. But yeah, that was sent to me, and it's very, very cool. There was a priest sent me a book recently. I don't have it at my desk right now on essentially storing up your treasures in heaven, preparing yourself, thinking of your eternity as an investment, your spiritual life. So thank you, Father, for sending that to me. Again, it's not at my desk. I forgot it in the bedroom. But Glenn, back to the story too, and just doesn't know what to think of this. Yeah, Maureen, I didn't see that way. I saw it on Twitter. And I'm not surprised. Nothing they do now surprises me. I mean, they fund the Temple of Moloch also. Their employees can make a donation and can have their employers send, matching donation to the Temple of Moloch, because of course, that's what they do. the, they have sent internal memos for the June zeitgeist. You know what happened in June with the way the secular world, what the secular world forces on the rest of us, basically telling people to go along with it, to embrace it. Meanwhile, their hosts go up on their shows and try to talk about how bad it all is, while they themselves are funding it, because of course they are. Yeah, Mary Woolley, I always wake up this early. There's a reason I do my video production work in the middle of the night. It's because it's just when I naturally wake up, and I can't get back to sleep, even though I would like to tonight. For those who might not be aware, for the last 2 weeks, I actually spent the majority of my time the last 2 weeks sick. I was not well at all. It didn't mostly show in my videos. My voice was a little off a couple of times, and I was pale in one video, but I was really sick. And my plan this morning was to either do a short live stream or before, getting the family ready for mass, or go to the gym and just start getting my stamina back. My stamina was gone. So go, hit the bike or something there for 30 minutes, listen to a faith podcast or something while I'm on the bike, and just get back to physical. So any prayers for, for good recovery would be helpful. My eldest son, who's 4, brought in a stomach bug of some kind. He got pretty sick, and then I got sick, and my little girl got sick. Thanks be to God, my wife and our 3-month-old son didn't get sick, so that was good. But there was a stretch there for 5 days where I didn't eat. The one time I tried eating made me really sick about halfway through that, so I just didn't eat for like 5 days. I can stand to lose the weight, but that's not the way you want to do it. Jacob asks, "What can men do in such times?" It's simple. Work on your salvation. Become saints. Pick up, start working towards praying a full 15-decade rosary each day, or wear the miraculous medal. Get enrolled in the Brown Scapular, and include the little office, the Blessed Virgin Mary. Yes, I know about the Sabbatine privilege, but Sister Lucia said if you're trying to live the Fatima message, you need to be praying the little office. So yeah, the Sabbatine privilege may apply, but that doesn't mean you're living the Fatima message. So try to live the Fatima message, and that means praying the little office of the Blessed Virgin Mary, which is well, it's like a version of the Liturgy of the Hours, but in this case, it's short. The longest of them is Matins and Lauds, which you would pray pretty much when you get up in the morning, and that can take about 15 minutes to do, 20 minutes to do. Vespers later in the day at 6 p.m. roughly takes 7 minutes maybe, but the rest in between are pretty short. But you keep it as if you were keeping the office, like the breviary. It's like a short version of the breviary for those enrolled in the Brown Scapular. And I have a video in the past where I talked about how Sister Lucia said it was part of the Fatima message. People, of course, try to counter signal that, saying, "Well, Sabbatine privilege, Sabbatine privilege." That's great, but for whatever reason, people are allergic to the idea of praying a little bit more, and I want to push back against that pretty hard. Sister Lucia said, "Living the Fatima message means doing the little office." Do it. I use the 1962 version. You can find versions of that one online for free. Angelus Press publishes one. You can buy it on Amazon. It's not much. It's a little black book that you can fit in your pocket. Sinkoi, I don't think that that number 45 told the world that he was the Messiah. I don't believe you. I watched a lot of his stuff during his brief run, and I just don't believe you. There's a lot of fake footage out there of him. The guy's not exactly a deep spiritual thinker. Okay, so I don't believe you, and I'm not exactly his biggest fan either. It's just aluminum hat thinking at this point. But yeah, so that's the fun news story. Fox deciding that they're going to just do silly things or evil things like funding literally the enemies of the group of their audience, organizations their audience stands in stark opposition to, and then they wonder why their ratings are so low, why people turn to YouTube, or why they turn to One America or these other places. They can't figure out why people do that, but it's pretty straightforward. It's because most people are aware enough to know that it's just not something they're interested in anymore. That sort of silly, outdated mode of mainline conservative thinking. 20 years ago, that the mainline establishment conservatives did a doozy on not just the U.S. but the whole Western world, and people don't want that stuff. They just don't. And Fox has got now went from number 1 in the ratings to number 3 overnight in the last couple of months. So, again, they don't understand why it is. Maybe they should look at what it is they're funding, because once they see what they're funding, once audience members see it, they don't want to be part of it anymore. Greetings from England. Hello, Sean. Guessing it's about 10 a.m. in England, give or take, getting ready for Mass, or maybe you just got back from Mass. Sinclair, well, there's a difference between calling yourself the chosen one and calling yourself Messiah. Okay. Again, I would tune away from a lot of the really fringe stuff that want to make torpedo everything people are trying to do in opposition to evil things going on in the world. You saw that with that movie that's been out that surprised everybody this summer, that came out with YouTube is now starting to clamp down on even mentions of that movie. Surprise, surprise. But you started seeing in conservative spaces people saying, well, the people who behind that movie, they're really connected to all these evil things, providing no proof of it, of course. And when they do provide any proof, it's actually dubious stuff. And people just lap it up because, of course, they do. Because there's such a thing as going far too into the direction of thinking that you've woken up to the real world, when you've just become the right-wing version of the other side. And I don't do that stuff. It's tempting, but I don't do that stuff. Learn to live. Yeah, that the movie has the word freedom in the title. That's the one. Ariel says people tend to polarize about that former president. If procedural law is manipulated in order to discredit an opponent, then perhaps it's done in order to incite further derision. I've got a very ambivalent attitude about him in general. I learned a long time ago not to put my faith in earthly princes. No matter how much I might agree with some of the things they're doing, their rhetoric, and if I find them personally entertaining, and figured out that they're not actually trying to, come after my family, that still doesn't mean I'm going to jump on board, put feet first, and say, hey, this is great. This is, put all my trust in them. That's a recipe for disaster. You will guarantee be disappointed if you do that. It's always good to have a nuanced take on any of them, because none of these people we're talking about are saints. Not a single one of them. And it's a sad state of affairs when the church is in such a bad state that we start looking towards earthly, secular leaders for almost moral guidance or spiritual guidance or things. That's how bad things are. And people want to fill that void with politics. And I used to be like that, not anymore. I just wash my hands of it. Yes, I go out and do my duty as a citizen, but and I pay attention more than most people. But I don't put my trust in any of these people. They're not worth your trust. Not a single one of them. Don't trust them. Even if you support them at the polls or whatnot, that doesn't mean that putting your trust in them is a good idea. Well, thanks, Sean. You're going to Gateshead Holy Name of Jesus SSPX Chapel. Good. Enjoy Mass. And just, don't get distracted at Mass. That's the hardest thing, is to not get distracted at Mass. A lot of people allow themselves to get distracted during Mass. Well, I'm glad we were praying for my health, Miriam. Yeah, some people knew I was sick, but most people didn't. I kept it pretty close to the chest. Even on my Facebook, I didn't mention it really. All I did was, all I do on my Facebook is post memes, basically. But so yeah. But I guess for those of you who are devastated that the former president used some really dumb language, and the star of that movie used some dumb language, you're going to stay home in 2024? Because that's actually the goal of why these media outlets point that stuff out. And also, don't use film celebrities as your, regardless if they are otherwise sensible on some issues. Like, the star of that movie is also a believer in Medjugorje, and that to me is a giant litmus test. Like, if you believe Medjugorje is real, I don't think you're awake to the crisis in the church. That is clearly a demonic event happening there, meant to replace Fatima. There's heresies, documented heresies said there, allegedly by Our Lady. Once I read a few of those that were from pro Medjugorje sources, yeah, I'm sorry, I don't believe that most people when they go to their judgment, are sent to purgatory anymore. That's just nonsense. That's on its face nonsense. That was enough for me. Well, Jacob, I will push back on your Reverend Novus Ordo comment, because the Novus Ordo comes from Protestants, and it came from a confirmed stonecutter leading a committee of Protestants, and they designed the thing in a coffee shop. You can put as much as you want on the new mass to make it look like a Catholic mass, but at the end of the day, it's still a rite written by subversives designed to destroy belief in the real presence. That's why you have the communion in the hand now. Destroy it's the whole thing is top to bottom designed to be the rite of a new religion. That's what it is. And when you read about the origins of it, go read the book The Work of Human Hands by Father Cicada. No, I'm not a sedevacantist, and he was, but his book is widely considered by non-sedevacantist theologians to be the best history of the development of the Novus Ordo. Go read that if you can find a copy. Since he passed away, that book's been out of print. And every time I mention it on my channel, people snap up what copies they can get. But it becomes pretty clear once you read that people are left with the question: why would you want to put yourself in an environment that was designed by enemies of the church within the church to take people's faith away? Because that's what it was, and it's been accomplished. Learning to Live says they believe Fatima, not the ongoing visionary. Well, yeah, after 40 years, I mean, it's you have to start asking some hard questions about things. Like after 40 years of consistent public quasi-revelation, I mean, after 40 years, people should be asking questions, but they don't want to. They don't want to. There's a lot of other questions that have been hashed to death. I don't talk about that subject on my channel in general because some people really want to believe it. That's fine. You can believe whatever one you want. I'll just tell you, I don't buy it at all. That doesn't mean there aren't things happening. But I just, as a general rule, don't touch ongoing or current modern apparitions. The most modern I'll touch is Our Lady of Akita. That's a lot, and Our Lady of Kibeho. Those are the last ones that I really have touched. Anything more contemporary than that, I'm skeptical of generally, or I won't touch until they've gotten formal approval. And even then, the crowd running Rome now, I wouldn't trust their formal approval of anything. I don't know why anybody would, to be honest with you. Conservatives, quote unquote, continue to prop up fraud news. Yeah, that's pretty true. Plus, it helps that a lot of the cable networks don't want to, or the cable companies don't want to give their competitors any space at all. That's just true. They don't want to give them any space. Sad, but it is the truth. And until that changes, I mean, yeah, you can get some of their competitors on networks, on cable, by your cable providers, but yeah, you usually have to pay more to get them, whereas Fox comes standard. And now you might be thinking, well, who still gets cable? Well, a lot of older people do, and a lot of people still pay for cable. I don't know why. I honestly, streaming services make more sense because at least you can sort of customize what you get that way, even if the companies themselves are mostly evil. I mean, we know how bad Amazon is, and how bad Netflix are, and Hulu and Disney and all the rest. We know how bad they are, but Comcast isn't any better. Or whatever, or Dish Network, or whatever it is you're talking about. None of them are actually any better. So it becomes a where you're going to fight your battles kind of thing. You want the next pope to be an awesome Orthodox pope to bring us back. Well, I'm not sure how that's going to happen, but when the next conclave happens, in theory, I'll be here covering it. And I looked at the math, and it doesn't look good, to put it mildly. But you never know. The conclaves could be funny things. Sayamara Vesper says, if you remember, Fox News had to fight quite a bit to get its place back in the late 90s. Yeah, and it probably is why it takes the stance as it does now to keep that place, because a lot of things that people don't realize is that big business was taken over by our secular adversaries in the 2010s. They quietly took them over. And these a lot of mechanisms to do that, and that's why you have Disney putting out the weird movies they're putting out now. It's why you have car commercials and adult beverages advertising for things that had nothing whatsoever to do with their products and might upset their customer base. They do that on purpose because their companies were taken over internally by, frankly, radical college students. They got at jobs in human resources and other places, and they fundamentally changed those organizations from within. That's how that happened, and it's an unfortunate thing, but what are you going to do at this point? You can push back. Hopefully, Congress changes some laws about things. That requires, getting people there who actually care enough and can't be bought by corporate donations. Satanic evil is endemic to creation, but now all we can do is recognize our spiritual origins and our every act of stoical, ethical recognition of providence. I mean, you can basically, you can just sort of, in plainer language, you can, you take on that stiff upper lip thing and turn your eyes to God, seek sanctity, live a sanctifying life, and spread the gospel. That's the other way. That's basically how you combat this stuff. But otherwise, it's the system as it stands is not going to be on your side. It just is not. And that's why, for those tuning in late, early I talked a little bit about how it's come out through internal memos that Fox News is supporting the Temple of Satan through direct donations. Now, these are direct donations because they're matching what their employees are donating. They also temple what I call the Temple of Moloch. That's for the Moloch ritual, another term, and organizations associated with it that you can't mention safely on this platform unless you are a full-throated supporter of them. So that's why we're talking about Fox right now. There's not really a good secular alternative. A lot of people watch EWTN other than like the Papal Posse with Raymond Arroyo. I'm not a fan personally. Too moderate for my taste. I'm not a moderate in the slightest. My tone is moderate, but you can tell by the things I talk about in my videos that I'm not a moderate. I'm just not. I don't think this is the time for moderation. That ship sailed a long, long time ago. Greetings to you as well, Rachel. Surprised you have access to the internet there. But yeah, so been doing this for about half an hour now, so I'm going to call it here simply because pretty soon I have to actually start getting the family ready for mass. We tend to hit the road at 6 a.m. So because we have a 90-mile drive, so each way, and we go for the first mass, the low mass. When you have small children and it's a low mass is much easier for a couple of toddlers to handle. So that's going to be our plan this morning: is a low mass and then 90-mile drive back. So for those of you who support the work I do, you're helping offset my gas price, gas at the very least this morning. So greetings to you in Los Angeles, Guitar. Good morning, Leela. And anyway, I hope you all have a good Sunday. Tune in for my, if you can, for my Sunday video that'll go live in a couple of hours. It's going to be St. Alphonsus Liguori talking about some of the more the most dangerous sins. These aren't the deadly sins, but these are next to them. In this one, he's going to be talking about hate, basically. So it's an interesting short thing for you to get thinking about, because it's so easy for us to get wrapped up and lose our souls starting to hate our adversaries, and you can't do that as a Catholic. You can't. It's hard. So remember, our Lord told us to even love our enemies. Thank you, Jacob Reed, for the super chat. Is appreciated. But this is so thanks for tuning in today, folks. And I'll try to do another one of these here soon, and probably Saturday night, Sunday morning. Anyway, God bless.